Hey folks, here we are for Game 1 with the Arcanis the Omnipotent Paradox Engine Storm deck. This was the first game I played with this deck, so I wanted to record it to remember it. And we're playing against a lot of commanders here. We have Tatiova, which I like this card a whole lot. Ceton, which is definitely a very interesting card. You don't have to have haste with your creatures, nor do they have to be not summoning sick. In order to use this ability, you can just tap them as soon as they come into play, so you could probably do Glimpse of Nature, Elf Ball combos with this, or just a fun Druid Tribal deck, which I've seen this guy before, and I'm pretty sure he makes a bunch of different Tribal decks, so I'm excited to see what he's got going on over here. And then we have Marquesa. And this hand here is definitely a weird one, but I decided to keep it. It has 5 mana that it can put into play on turn 1, which is pretty powerful. And I know that my deck can use fast artifact mana very effectively. But it has too many lands in it, and I'm kind of hoping to get a gas card here soon so that I can actually do something with all this mana. But I decided to keep, and I'm on the play. Unfortunately, Luxie had to mulligan to 5, and I drew a Mox Diamond, which is very great because it turns these extra islands into fast mana, and more importantly, into blue fast mana. So I play out some of my artifacts. I decided to keep the Mana Crypt in hand. I don't think anybody's going to wheel, but there's a chance that somebody could wheel, so I probably should just, generally speaking, you should probably play out your mana artifacts. The Tatiova player plays a turn 1 Birds. Ceton plays a land, taps and passes. Marquesa plays a tap gain life land, so he is currently winning. I drew Mystical Tutor, which is a very nice pickup. And I decided I'm just going to go ahead and run out the Arcanis. I could Mystical on up to keep for something, but I'm not quite sure what I want yet, so I'm not sure if I will do that play or not. But yeah, having turn 2 Arcanis in play is pretty good. That's pretty rare, honestly. Tatiova player plays a Nature's Lore, gets a Forest, in this case a Breeding Pool, and passes the turn. Ceton plays another land, taps down and passes. And now it's time for Marquesa. They play an Isig Signet and pass the turn. So I guess Tails, because Tails never fails except for me, whenever I guess it, in which case it always fails. So I go ahead and tap Arcanis immediately, and now I draw Into the Infinite, which gives me a good game plan with this Mystical Tutor here. At end of turn, I can Mystical Tutor for High Tide, and I will have exactly enough mana to cast High Tide and Enter the Infinite on the next turn. The one thing that I have to think about is, because I have a couple of my fast artifact mana here, I have Mana Crypt and Mox Diamond, I may not have enough fast mana in order to win after I resolve this Enter the Infinite, but I had to think about it for a minute, and I in fact do have enough lands, or excuse me, enough fast mana sources in order to do this. Tatiova player plays a World Shaper, which I think is a great card. Whenever he dies, you get a Splendid Reclamation, and whenever he attacks, you get to mill 3, so it seems pretty good. Ceton plays an Elvish Visionary, does not play a land, and passes the turn, which is pretty unfortunate for that player. I mean, they did mull to 5, but I hate it whenever only one person isn't making their land drops. It always stinks. Marquesa plays their commander. Here I go with that play. I have Mystical Tutor for High Tide. And I cast High Tide. And I cast Enter the Infinite. Boom. Putting back an island. So I have not drawn 3 cards with Arcanis. The goal is to get Laboratory Maniac in play, and then tap Arcanis. But I'd also like to have Counter Magic up at the same time. I have Pact of Negation. All my opponents are tapped out, but I'd still like to have something additional. And unfortunately, the game bugs here, so I'm not going to be able to show you what happens, but I'll be able to tell you what happens. So I have a couple of fast artifacts in my hand. One was Chrome Mox. I imprinted Rhystic Study because it's unlikely to be useful at this point. Then I have Mox Opal and Lotus Petal. So what I do is I play out the Mox Opal, and I tap it to play Mana Vault. I realize my grip is really large here. I just, drew my deck. I play Mana Vault, then I tap Mana Vault, leaving 1 colorless floating, and I play Helm of Awakening. It's somewhere around in here. It's one of those brown artifacts. Either way, I play it. Then, here we go, right here. So I have 2 mana floating, or 1 colorless floating and a Mox Opal that I can tap. So I use the colorless floating to cast Grim Monolith, and then I tap Grim Monolith to play, and the Mox Opal to play Paradox Engine, And then from there, I cast a Lotus Petal, and I'm off to the races. So after that, I just cast Laboratory Maniac and tap my Arcanis with counter magic backup, with lots of counter magic backup. And I still wanted to preserve this game because it was the first game I played, but it's kind of stinks that it bugged. But I decided I'm just going to record it anyway. But here's game one.